How's it going, everyone? It's Carpo here on the, what is it, the 6th January 2018 now. And I thought I'd make a little video here about, I don't even really know how to define it, you know. I was going to say existentialism, but that's not really what this is about. That's a line of thinking that has a variety of different opinions on it, but it's along the lines of life is what you give it. Life is what you make of it, and any meaning, inherent meaning that's given to us, or the purpose of our lives, our life path, has to be found from within. And it's funny because we as individuals, we all have our own viewpoints. We all have completely different mindsets about how the world works. Yet we can come together on certain aspects of life because of things like, agreeing on certain values. Or agreeing that this set of morals works for us, and therefore others who have a similar moral compass fall into the same realm, so therefore we have trust in them. Religious groups, political groups, anybody who can find an attachment to someone else who is in that same, I guess it's not a matter of a person saying, well, this person agrees with me and I agree with them, therefore we know we're right. It's more of a, we're all a little unconfident about what we think we know about life. And existentialism deals with that fact by saying, let's pick it apart, let's look at every aspect of life and ask ourselves what really matters. And in the end, the result we're looking for is to lead a happy and productive life. Most of our fears can be traced down to our fear of mortality, and most of our elation can be tied to the things that we've achieved and the experiences we've had. So, fearing death is a useless thing, but pondering it and always keeping it in your mind allows you to never push it to the back. In other words, we're always aware that anything could happen tomorrow. And for me anyway, that helps me to lead a more productive, a richer and happier life, where I don't feel like I'm yearning for something greater that I don't have. Although still having enough within me to want to push forward to achieve some greatness in my life. You know, it's taken me a long time in my life to go over and kind of revisit all the different ideas over the years that I've studied. Everything from, you know, the way the world works and history, ancient knowledge, everything from UFOs to the monetary system to religions, you know, and comparing them and asking, what is it that every human yearns for? And it's understanding, it's connection, it's love, it's experience, it's those basic things that we take for granted as being humans. And often when we don't take enough charge of our own lives and don't do enough, this is when we have to be careful. Because when a person fails to achieve the things that they want, or when a person never set any goals for themselves and therefore is living in squalor and never made an effort to get out, those are the type of people who often point fingers at other people, who can't handle the fact that they made bad decisions in their life that led them into a shitty place, and therefore they want to say it's the government's suppression, it's, these groups are, keeping us from making money, or these people aren't allowing us to believe or think what we want. When deep down inside we know that no matter how much we cast the blame or point the finger, everyone else is still leading their lives, we're still trapped within ours. So, understanding that little confusing paradigm there within, that we are often to blame for our own faults. It's like people say, people misinterpret this, and kind of in the spiritual realm, if you will, or the New Age, a lot of people say, well, anything that happens to us in this life, it's our own fault, it's our karma. And if it isn't for something in this life, then it was something from a past life. And I scoff at this idea. I say, it's not that I don't believe that reincarnation is possible. It's that if I did have a past life, I don't remember it. Therefore, I know that this is the real me now in this life. And if I do reincarnate again into another body, why would that person suffer the karma? You say, well, it's the same soul. And what I'm getting at is that we don't always create our own karma. There are wonderful children who die the day they're born. Or 5 years old, or 10 years old, innocent people who have done nothing wrong. And the only way we can, understand that is by saying, well, they must have done something wrong, or someone must have done something wrong. Instead of just saying, that's life. That's how it goes. reading into deeper meanings, that's fine if that's something that moves you, but if we can't put it down in a format we understand and carry it with us, then our minds will just continue to wander. And you know, one of the things is that life is an art form. It's meant to be lived like a painting, if you will. It's that we could sketch out a few, you know, little things on a piece of paper. That's fine. It's different if you apply yourself for one focused, you know, a way of life that you want to embrace life for what it is. And you're painting a picture, and hopefully we paint a good picture with our lives, but, you know, we get stuck into kind of culture, which is, you know, culture, you know, the root word in that is cult. And cult has been given a status today that is, you know, we think of a cult, maybe a bunch of people who get together under some crazy religious leader, like, you know, Jonestown Massacre, or, you know, drinking the Kool-Aid, you know. But it's not. In fact, all religions are cults, and many belief systems are cults in their own way. They're cultures. They are a way of thinking that is outside what people might consider mainstream, and that's what sets a smaller cult. Like the less people involved in a belief system, the more likely it is to be called a cult. Whereas if millions of people believe something, it's considered to be a religion. And really what it comes down to is what, you know, what we make of it, I guess. But culture is supposedly, you know, opposing, or cult is opposed to, say, the mainstream. And it's interesting because, and I heard someone say this in a video I watched, that there is no mainstream. That mainstream is just a fallacy. It's an idea that once existed. You know, say in the 60s, you know, the mainstream soda would be Coca-Cola, if you want to call it that. Coca-Cola is a great example of someone who, you know, a company who has convinced everyone that if you drink Coke, then you fit into this happy group of people who also drink Coke. And you're going to get laid if you drink this whiskey. And, you know, all of the way that we've been deluded by these completely absurd ads telling us who we are and what we want. But the word mainstream, you know, when people talk about mainstream, even mainstream media, there really isn't any anymore. The internet has flipped that on its head, where we can really look inside and say there is no mainstream. And the reason why it's so important to us to believe that there is a mainstream is either so we can rebel against it, or B, so we can feel confident in some of the things we're doing being legitimate, if you will. In other words, if we're wasting our life away and think, is this the right path, which we all wonder, what could I be doing or should I be doing, then we either set ourselves on a goal, or we just let the world push us around. And it's like they say, you know, you either choose how you want to live your life, or life will choose how it wants you to live. So there is no mainstream anymore. There are only many different groups, and that makes it even more difficult for people to figure out what is true. And that's an illusion in itself. But I think one of the most crucial things to face in life is to not censor anything in our lives. I do not believe that anything is taboo. I don't believe that any subjects are taboo to talk about. I believe that every subject needs to be talked about, because anything that happens in this world happens in this world. And anything that happens in our hearts or our minds happens in our hearts and minds. And we're kind of torn between, we took this scientific endeavor, this direction, to try to get ourselves out of our delusions and our fears and our misunderstandings. But now it's almost become a cult of its own. And people are afraid to speak out and say, hey, I have this new theory. And they say, well, you know, you're going to be cast out of the mainstream if you do so. So yeah, there is a mainstream in many ways, but it's not as many people that are, it's not a majority. Mainstream is never a majority. It might be 20–30% of a population that you consider something mainstream, but it's really subjective to, you know, it's semantics, you know, how you're going to use the word, I guess. So to me, regular life is divine. This is divinity, existing within this paradigm, this three-dimensional reality that we're given, the senses that we have, our vision, the colors we can see. All of these things were given to us to observe the world around us. Now, we could just as easily be a consciousness in an inanimate form that just can think about stuff. Compare that to the person who spends their whole life pondering and trying to understand the deeper meaning of the universe, instead of just living in it, you know. feeling like maybe we're obliged to do so. And I don't want you to think that I'm saying don't look into things or research. Obviously, to me, one of the most important thing that we can do, besides, living life on life's terms, if you will, is to have enough emotional intelligence to distinguish things from, things that are beneficial from things that are harmful. And in order to do that, we have to educate ourselves. Knowledge is just knowledge. It's useless without applying it and turning it into wisdom. And that wisdom is what helps us to grow and survive. And when a person tells you they're wise, that's arrogance. A person isn't wise because they think that they have a lot of knowledge. Nor is an intellectual better at living their life merely because they use bigger or fancier words. I've always tried to keep things in the layman terms so we can all understand them, because we're all in this together. When I was younger, I looked at some of my old writings and poetry, and I would try to use the biggest words I could because I wanted it to sound important. I wanted it to sound like I knew what I was talking about. And now when I encounter people like that, it just reminds me of that period in my life where, my 20-year-old arrogance, where I thought I had it all figured out. And how can these, 50, 60, 70-year-old people be so stupid and not know what I know as a 20-year-old? We all grow out of that, hopefully. But if we don't, then we carry that with us the rest of our lives, and we never mature, because maturing means acknowledging that you're going to have some beliefs, you're going to have some ideas, they're going to be destroyed sometimes, and you can rebuild them, but all the while you're building your own temple, and you can't be resistant to what other people say or think. You can't be worried about what another person may feel about you. You can't worry about how whether something you want to accomplish is going to end in failure or not. Because nobody ever learned anything from, deciding not to do something. They learn from deciding to do something, and if it fails, then you learn from that experience, and it's something that tangible, something you can always remember. So when we're going through life, I think it's important that we observe the archetypes. That's kind of the last thing I wanted to touch on here. The archetypes are the patterns that occur over and over and over. When seeing things as, fractal in nature, if you will. The way that the tree branches compared to a lightning bolt, and the different patterns that emerge within blood vessels and rivers, and how, wait a minute, these are all very similar. What does that mean? And why do they follow these ratios of, Fibonacci sequence and phi? We don't know. It just is. It seems to be a language that can be observed, and I only bring that up because it's something that we can see that takes a little bit of the confusion away of what is this all. To believe that there is an underlying pattern doesn't mean that we believe that we can understand it. But if we do observe these archetypes, not just in nature, but within the nature of ourselves, then we learn to understand each other better. We understand the intentions of a person who says one thing, but may mean another. And I think that one of our biggest faults is misunderstanding. We're always misinterpreting one another. And so, and we all do it. Somebody might leave a comment on a video and somebody else attacks them for it, and they're like, wait, I didn't mean it that way. It was totally taken out of context. But these are words typed in a box. Now, if we can't even understand each other when we're face-to-face using emotions and, and our animated gestures, and we still get misinterpreted, of course we're going to be misinterpreted through a text or online. So, giving the people the patience and understanding to realize, giving people a chance to explain themselves, and maybe giving ourselves a chance to explain to ourselves what we believe and what matters to us. So, I guess it's about not overthinking. You have to think, but don't overthink. I kind of have like a 2 or 3. I guess I haven't really put a number on it, but if I have a thought and it goes to another thought and another thought, I let it go then. I listen to my thoughts, but don't let them lead me down a trail of fear or wonder of, what could happen next. And overcoming our fear is a crucial element to existence. So we look around and we say, I want to have emotional intelligence, sure, and I want to understand, but still have emotions and be able to laugh and cry. And still get angry sometimes. That's okay too. All emotions are valid. They all have their place. Ignoring any part of it is only going to cause us more pain. So, if we're not sure where we want to be, and we're not sure what we want to do, what we want to believe, how we want to proceed in our lives, I think that one of the best ways to do so is to look around at people we admire, if we have anyone, any heroes, great speakers, or teachers, and then learn about that person. And really ask yourself, is this person putting on an act? Is this just, for money, or is it just for recognition or fame? Or does this person even know what they're talking about at all? Is this some guy channeling Bashar the alien up on stage? Maybe that helps some people to listen to a guy that claims to be channeling an alien. But really, my belief is that it's just his own subconscious, projecting his own thoughts. So many different, channelers and gurus and teachers all want to tell us this is the way to live. But observe them and see, are they really living the way that they claim to live? People like Deepak Chopra, who there was a recent documentary done by his own son who followed him around. And I mean, Deepak is like, he's a phony. He's really, he's so adamant about what he believes, but he can't just admit, I don't know something, or hey, we don't understand, or maybe quantum physics isn't the word to use when we're talking about, the spirit. As much as the New Age tends to dismiss science as being, science is always trying to ruin all the fun, they tend to use all the scientific terms and words, using quantum, like quantum healing, that term to me is like just absurd. And I guess I bring that in because it's important while we're proceeding in our lives and while we're trying to figure out what we want to do. It's easy to get sucked in when people tell us, hey, this is the right way. Hey, come on over here, check this out. And if we fall for it, we might end up leading ourselves down a path of confusion that causes us more angst than happiness. Maybe not. And I'm not saying that a person can't just believe what they want to believe and be happy with it if it's not true. They sure can. People do it all the time. But if you're a truly honest person with yourself, then you're never going to be able to build a temple on a crumbling foundation. So lay your foundation first and move forward. And I wish you all the best in your lives. And we're all in this together. Remember, being human is confusing. We get wrapped up in our arguments or our lifestyles or, something we have to accomplish. And then we step back and say, it really doesn't fucking matter. And that's nihilism, as a positive nihilism. The idea that things don't matter, you can choose to say, things don't matter, so I'm not going to give a shit. Or you can say, things don't matter, so I'm going to give it meaning, and I'm going to make it matter. And that's the path I choose, at least for now. And things change, people change, times change. And so I wish you all the best in the new year, and talk to you soon.